Hello everyone. I wanted to start today by looking at a series of rituals that are more secular in nature before we jump into looking at particularly religious rituals. And I've chosen something that hopefully will be familiar to everybody. It's certainly very familiar to me. And I hadn't thought of using this at first because, like all of us, I'm a fish in water. I don't think a lot about my own personal context necessarily. And once I started thinking about it, I realized that university life is highly ritualized, highly structured around the seasons of September to the spring, and we have graduation in the spring, and we have Frosh Week in the fall, and so on. And so I wanted to use this as an example of how, as Bocock argues, we're surrounded and we participate in rituals all the time, often without even thinking of it because we take them so completely for granted. Okay, well, here we have a picture probably familiar to everyone of a group of frosh. Apparently we're not supposed to use that word anymore. I'm not quite sure what happened there. It'd be interesting to know the origins of the word and how it came to be that we're not supposed to use it anymore. But anyway, they call it orientation now, which sounds very bureaucratic. But anyway, these students are clearly keeping it real. It's not looking very bureaucratic. So we can see they're celebrating. And so I want you to start paying attention. Probably all of us have seen pictures like this, often when police make arrests. But anyway, so we can see, for instance, besides the gentleman with no shirt, that all of these people are dressed the same. So I want to flag this immediately, that when we're looking at rituals, especially rite of passage rituals, clothing is always important. It's almost always a type of clothing that is set apart for those practices. So we see here they're all wearing the same color, and generally it will be university colors. So I want you to start thinking about why that might be the case. Why would all the participants be wearing the exact same shirt, the exact same colors? What are they attempting to achieve by doing that? And here we have the intrepid Nipissing Frosh leaders. A number of my students have participated in this, maybe even some of you that are in this class. So if you have, please weigh in. And if you've been part of the orientation, please weigh in. It's very interesting to me. I came to university as a bit of an older student, so I didn't participate in these particular rituals. So always interesting to hear if it was useful for you or did what it was intended to do. So we can see, again, the Frosh leaders are also wearing the university colors. They have the banner, the NUSU banner. And so through this use of clothing and color, there's the idea of the unity of all the Nipissing students, both the leaders and the incoming students. And so what you start to see here is that we have, usually if you're participating in these rituals, you're young, you're 17, 18, maybe 19. So this idea that it's probably your first time away from home. So this is a very momentous change that's happening of somebody moving from living at home into starting to become an adult and live independently. So this process of kind of being initiated into this new Nipissing community becomes very important, especially for those students who are living in residence. I think this is particularly important. And so we can see right from the beginning the attempt to create a community, a bonded community in the university. Okay, wow, where to begin with this one? So this person is looks like they're painted blue, or I don't know if that's an optical illusion, but I have seen that where people are painted with the university colors. And just imagine yourself as an anthropologist coming from another country. Say you're coming from, I don't know, Croatia, and you're looking at this. This looks very strange. So we need to deconstruct it and look at what's going on. So this is very typical of initiation rituals across the board, where there's some form of humiliation. And it's part of the logic that it's breaking down your old identity and rebuilding a new identity. There's been a lot of controversy around these kind of hazing rituals at universities. Many of them have been actually banned because they got a little too extreme. This one looks fairly innocuous but dirty, and so she looks quite happy here. So I leave it up to you. Maybe some of you experienced this, so please share with us what the experience was like if you've experienced something like this. I do find this fascinating, and as you're going to see with some scars from Hinduism, that these orientation frost rituals are actually using the elements that are often typical of initiation. So you saw the earth element just now, and now we find the water element. So water, ubiquitous in ritual, as many of you probably already know. So you could argue this is a kind of a baptismal ritual that she's being initiated into university life here. So this publicity picture that's used by the university gives you some idea of what the university is hoping will be the end result of these types of rituals. These people look very happy. They look like they're close friends. They're wearing the Lakers sweatshirts and t-shirts and the scarves, and they look like they feel like they're part of a community. So this is definitely, and they're cleaned up. So this is definitely sort of, I think, the ideal put forward by the university, that this would be what they hope the end result of those rituals are. I already spoke briefly about the elements in the ritual, and we also see, again, always with ritual, the use of symbolism. And so universities are no different. Generally, universities have some form of an insignia and a motto. And so you may or may not know that this is the Nipissing insignia and motto. So if we break it down, if we were in person, I would have you we'd work together to break it down, but I'm going to have to do it on my own here. So we see clearly on the shield there the idea of nature. So even the colors of Nipissing, the blue and the green, the idea that we're in the north, we're by the lake, we're set in nature is very important. Also the owl. And so the owl is another symbol of Nipissing. And of course, many of you will know that the owl goes back in Greek culture to Athena. So the idea of wisdom, that the owl sits on the shoulder of the goddess of wisdom. Also, I don't know if this is a direct connection, but this is something students have told me, that the owl is actually sacred to the indigenous people of the area. And so there's that resonance as well. And I have actually seen an owl on campus, so that's legit. And then the motto, integritas. So the idea that we're striving to have integrity in everything that we do. And so this is a very interesting idea, and I usually pose this question to my students: why would you need something like this? You know, you don't generally at a job, you don't necessarily have an insignia, although many companies also have some form of an insignia. But the idea, I would argue, is that the university is not a business, it's a public institution. It actually emerged from the cloister, it emerged from religious settings. So the idea that what we're doing here is not simply a business transaction, and certainly it isn't for me. Teaching is a vocation, and being a student is also not a business transaction. It's a very, if you'll bear with me, kind of a sacred thing that we're doing in terms of participating in education together. So this insignia, this motto, reminds us again and again that what we're doing is very important, that we've set aside a special place and time to do it, and that we're taking it very seriously. So again, if we were in person, I would take us as a class to the front lobby of the university, and you could look at this. So I invite you, when you're actually back on campus, to go and have a look. It's in the glass case right at the front there. And it's the Nipissing Maze. And so at least to my knowledge, all the universities have one of these. It stems back from the English system. And the Nipissing Maze, I have to say, is particularly beautiful, and it's there's a description on the side of the case explaining everything, but I'll just highlight a few aspects of it. So again, so you see the continuity of symbolism, the owl at the top of the mace, so the idea of wisdom at the top of the mace, then the shield, and then I believe there's a circle of granite, and so that symbolizes the shield, that if you've been on campus, you're well aware that the shield is everywhere in this area. The rock just sort of erupts from the ground willy-nilly. So that fact that we're in the shield and we're in the north. Then the wood is also taken from trees from the area. And then the feathers also attached to the mace that symbolize that we're on the traditional territory of the Nipissing First Nation, and that we recognize that and we're thankful for that. And then the rock at the bottom of the maze. So this is all very carefully crafted, and there's symbolism in all aspects of it. So this mace is only, as far as I know, taken out during graduation. And so it's a sort of a, I mean, you could see it's being treated as a sacred object. It's kind of put in a safe place until the ritual occurs. You don't just carry it around all times of the year. So it has a very specific significance, and only certain people can hold it. Okay, now we come to it, the final showstopper ritual in university life. And so this is a practice. I can see my friend Dr. Patrick in there on the right. So this is a very interesting practice. All universities have their own rituals. In other universities, I haven't experienced this. This is particularly Nipissing, I think, where we as faculty form a kind of line and the students walk through and we applaud. You can see that all the faculty are wearing their university colors, so wherever they graduated from. So there are different ones. You can see some are wearing red, some are in black. So they're wearing the hats and outfits of their places of graduation. This is always big, very popular with students. I heard one of them say, "Oh, it looks like Harry Potter" one time. So then the students come in, and they're also, again, as I said, pay attention to the clothing. So they're all wearing identical black gowns, and this is very traditional of universities that the students wear gowns at graduation to mark it out as a specific and very important occasion. And so you can see by the look on the face of the people, I have to say this is one of the most joyous rituals that there is. Even weddings, there's sort of a little bit of sadness, you know, the mothers are crying or whatever, but I have to say at graduation, everyone's pretty happy. So you can see it here that both the faculty and the students are very happy. So here we see the mace again, and there's Dr. Blaine Hatt carrying it in his ceremonial role, and he's leading the procession. So again, to flag this, processions are very common in ritual, religious and otherwise. So this idea of walking together as a group is very common, and it's interesting to think about why that might be the case. So when we look at the readings from Van Gennep, that idea where I discussed the Territorial Passage, so you're basically physically enacting, in this case, the move from being a student to being a graduate. So you're actually physically taking part in that kind of traveling that you're doing symbolically. So you move from the education center into the area where the graduation takes place. A lot of universities have a separate building. Nipissing isn't big enough to have that, but we do have, we use the athletic center gym. So the students move from the education center across into the athletic center and into the space there to take part in the ritual. So if all goes well and according to plan, this is what the end result looks like, a bunch of happy graduates. And so this is what it's all been about, all of us, faculty, admin, support staff, people do the cleaning, people that take care of the lawn. We're all trying to make this happen so that this keeps happening year after year, that people graduate. And so again, you can see the way they're dressed. They're all wearing the same color. They're all wearing the same outfit. And so that idea of the community, the communal aspect of it. And also there were rituals before that of hooding, which is also a very common ritual, to putting something over the head to symbolize the change of status, and then the wearing of the stole. And so typically also, as you probably know, there's a sort of an inspirational speech given by somebody who's invited to the university to speak to the graduating class. It generally contains, the one that I had was not inspiring at all. The guy talked about nanoscience, but usually it's a talk, at least at undergraduate level, about, you know, you're an adult now and you're going out into this fabulous adventure of your adult life, and you're going to be a contributing citizen, and you're always going to be a member of the Nipissing community. So it's usually very touching, and obviously in the audience are parents and friends and grandparents, and so it's generally a very moving experience. And so it's been interesting with me to talk to students over the years, because that rejection of ritual has also infected the university ritual, and so I've had a number of students say they're not going to participate, and I find that to be very unfortunate, because what we can see with this ritual, as we're going to see with a number of the other rites of passage, this is a marking of a momentous event in the life of the individual where they have taken many years of their life at great expense and time to pursue this, gaining a degree, which is a great accomplishment, and it takes a lot of effort and concentration, as I'm sure you're already aware. And so I believe anyway that it should be marked and it should be celebrated, and generally people go out and celebrate with their friends and family afterward. I would also argue that in the Canadian context, the graduation ritual is one of the few rituals we actually have that marks the territorial passage into adulthood. And so you'll see in the blog that I've attached this week that I think our society is struggling with a lack of ritual around this. And so for many, graduation moves in to fill that space of marking the movement from being sort of a teenager into young adulthood and then into full adulthood for many Canadians.